Okay, time to continue with the one and only Ivan. We are on a mini chapter called Nervous on page 200. All day long, I knuckle walk circles around my cage. I'm so nervous I can't nap, I can't even eat. Well, not very much anyway. I'm ready to show Julia what I've made. It has to be Julia. She's an artist. Surely she'll truly look at my painting. She won't notice the smudges and the tears. She won't care if the pieces don't quite fit together. She'll see past all of that. Surely Julia will see what I've imagined. I watch Ruby trudge sullenly through the 4 o'clock show, and I wonder, what will happen if I fail? What if I can't make Julia understand? But, of course, I know the answer. Nothing. Nothing will happen. Ruby will remain the main attraction at the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, conveniently located off I-95 with the shows at 2, 4, and 7, 365 days a year, after year, after year, after year. Showing Julia. It's time to show my work. The mall is silent except for Thelma the macaw, who is practicing her new phrase, uh-oh. Julia is finishing her homework. George is sweeping outside. Mac has gone home for the night. I grab Knot Tag and carefully pull out the folded papers. So many paintings, page after page, piece after piece of my giant puzzle. I pound on my glass and Julia glances over. Fingers trembling, I hold up one of my paintings. It's brown and green, a corner piece. Julia smiles. I display another one, and then another, and another, and another, each one a tiny part of the whole. Julia looks confused. But what is it? She asked. She shrugs. It doesn't matter. It's pretty just as it is. Uh-oh, says Thelma. No, I think, no. It does matter. More paintings. George calls out to Julia. He's done for the night. Grab your backpack, he says, and hurry, it's late. Gotta go, Ivan, Julia says. Julia doesn't understand. I have to find the right pieces. I dig through the pile. They're here somewhere. I know they are. I find one, another, and another. I try to hold 4 of them up against the glass. Bob, I say, help me, hurry. Bob grabs paintings with his teeth and drags them to me. One by one, I shove pictures through the window crack. They crumble and tear. There are too many pieces. My puzzle is too big. Careful, Ivan, Julia says. Those might be worth millions someday. You never know. She arranges the paintings into a neat stack. I suppose Mac's going to want to sell these in the gift shop. She still doesn't understand. I shove more out the hole and more, all of them, one after another. So Ivan's been painting, has he? George says as he puts on his coat. A lot, says Julia with a laugh. A whole lot. You're not taking all those home with you, George asks. I mean, no offense to Ivan, but they're just blobs. Julia thumbs through the towering stack of paintings. They might not be blobs to Ivan. Let's leave those by the office, George suggests. Mac will want to try to sell them. Although why would anyone pay $40 for a finger painting a 2-year-old could do, I don't know. I like Ivan's work, Julia says. He puts his feelings into them. He puts his hair into them, George says. Julia waves goodbye. Night, Ivan. Night, Bob. I press my nose against the glass and watch her walk away. All my work, all my planning wasted. I look at Ruby sleeping soundly, and suddenly I know she'll never leave the Big Top Mall. She'll be here forever, just like Stella. I can't let Ruby be another one and only. Chest beating. Often, when visitors come to see me, they beat their hands on their puny chests, pretending to be me. They pound away, soundless as the wet wings of a new butterfly. The chest beating of a mad gorilla is not something you ever want to hear. Not even if you're wearing earplugs. Not even if you're 3 miles away wearing earplugs. A real chest beating sends the whole jungle running, as if the sky has broken open, as if men and guns are near. angry. Thump! The sound, my sound, echoes through the mall. George and Julia spin around. Julia drops her backpack. George drops his keys. The piles of pictures go flying. Thump, thump, thump. I bounce off the walls. I screech and bellow, and I beat and I beat and I beat my chest. Bob hides under knot tag, his paws over his ears. I'm angry at last. I have someone to protect. Puzzle pieces. After a long while, I grow quiet. I sit. It's hard work being angry. Julia looks at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. I'm painting I'm a little out of shape. What the heck was that? George demands. Something's really wrong, Julia says. I've never seen Ivan act this way. He seems to be calming down, thank goodness, George says. Julia shakes her head. He's still upset, Dad. Look at his eyes. My pictures are scattered all over the floor like huge autumn leaves. What a mess, George says, sighing. Wish I hadn't bothered sweeping tonight. Do you think Ivan's okay? Julia asked. Probably it's just a temper tantrum, George says. He reaches under the chair to retrieve a brown and red picture. Can't say I blame the guy, stuck in that tiny cage all those years. Julia starts to answer, but then she freezes. She cocks her head. She stares at her feet where my pictures are in disarray. Dad, she whispers, come and see this. I'm sure he's another Rembrandt, George says. Let's pick up these and get going, Jules. I'm exhausted. Dad, she says again, seriously, look at this. George follows her gaze. I see blobs, many, many blobs, along with the occasional squirrel. Please, can we go home now? That's an H, Dad. Julia kneels down, straightening one picture, then another. That's an H, and here. She grabs more pictures. Put this one here, and I don't know. Maybe that one, you have an E. George rubs his eyes. I hold my breath. Julia's running now. She picks up one picture, sets it down it's like a puzzle, Dad. This is something, a word, maybe words, and a picture of something, a giant picture. Jules, George says, this is crazy. But he's looking at the floor too, wandering from picture to picture and scratching his head. H, Julie says. E, O, ho? Julia chews her lower lip. H-E-O, and that looks like a lot like an I. H-E-O-L, George writes in the air with his finger. I-E-O-H, not the letter, an actual I, and that's a foot, or maybe a tree, and a trunk. Dad, I think that's a trunk. Julia runs to my window. Ivan, she whispers, what did you make? I stare back and I cross my arms. This is taking much longer than I thought it would. Humans. Sometimes they make chimps look smart. Finally, George and Julia take the pictures to the ring where there's room to see them all. An hour passes and they try to assemble my puzzle. Ruby's awake now, and she and Bob and I watch. Ivan, Ruby says, is this a picture for me? Yes, I say proudly. Where am I supposed to be? That's a zoo, Ruby. See the walls and the grass and the people looking at you? Ruby squints. Who are all those elephants? You haven't met them. I say, yet. It's very nice. It's a very nice zoo, Ruby says with an approving nod. Bob nudges me with his cold nose. Yes, it is indeed. In the ring, Julia pumps her fist in the air. Yes, she cries. I told you, Dad. There it is. Home. Home. George gazes at the letters. He spins around to look at me. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Jules. You know, once in a trillion kind of thing. Like that old saying about the chimp and the typewriter. Give him long enough and he'll write a novel. I make a grumbling noise. As if a chimp could write a letter, let alone a book. Then, how do you explain the rest of it, Julia demands. The picture of Ruby in the zoo. How do you know it's a zoo? George asks. See the circle on the gate? There's a red giraffe in it. George squints and tilts his head. Are you sure that's a giraffe? I was thinking more along the lines of a deformed cat. It's the logo for the zoo, Dad. It's on all their signs. Explain that. George gives her a helpless smile. I can't begin to. I'm just saying there has to be a logical explanation. Look how big this is. Julia puts the last of Ruby's right ear into place. It's huge. It's definitely large, George agrees. Julia watches me. She chews on her thumbnail. I see the question in her eyes. She turns back to the paintings and stares at them, looking, truly looking. A slow smile dawns on Julia's face. Dad, she says, I have an idea, a big idea. Julia races around the edge of my painting, her arms spread wide. Billboard big. I'm not following you. I think this is meant to be on a billboard. That's what Ivan wants. George crosses his arms over his chest. What Ivan wants, he repeats slowly. And you know this because you two have been chatting? Because I'm an artist and he's an artist. Uh-huh, says George. Julia clasps her hands together. Come on, Dad, I'm begging you. George shakes his head. No, I'm not doing that. No billboard, no way. George looks. I'll get the ladder, says Julia. You get the glue, and I know it's dark out, and the billboard's lit. Mac'll fire me, Jules. Julia considers. But think of the publicity, Dad. Everybody would know about Ruby. You want me to put a sign that shows Ruby in a zoo with the word home on it in giant letters. George gestures toward my pictures. A sign, incidentally, that just happens to have been made by a gorilla. Exactly. And you want me to do it without Mac's permission? George asks. Exactly. No, George says. No way. Julia goes to the edge of the ring, careful not to step on any of my paintings. She picks up Mac's claw stick. She walks back and hands it to her father. George runs a finger along the blade. She's just a baby, Dad. Don't you want to help her? But how would it help, Jules? Even if lots of people see Ivan's sign, it doesn't mean anything's going to change. I'm not exactly sure yet, Julia shakes her head. Maybe people will see the sign and they'll know this isn't where Ruby belongs. Maybe they'll want to help too. George sighs. He looks at Ruby. She waves her trunk. It's a matter of principle, Dad. Principal. L-E, George corrects. Dad, Julia says softly, what if Ruby ends up like Stella? George looks at me, at Ruby, at Julia. He drops the claw stick. The ladder, he says quietly, it's in the storage locker. The next morning, I watch Mac's car slam to a halt in the parking lot. He leaps out. He stares at the billboard. His jaw is open. He doesn't move for a long time. Mad human. A mad gorilla is loud, but a mad human can be loud too, especially when he is throwing chairs and turning over tables and breaking the cotton candy machine. Phone call. Mac is kicking a trash can across the food court when the phone rings. He answers it, red-faced and sweating. What the? He demands. He glares at me. I don't know what he starts to say, but then he stops to listen. Who? Julia who? He asks. Oh, sure, George's kid. She's the one who called you? More talking. With the phone to his ear, Mac comes closer to my cage, eyeing me suspiciously. Yeah, he says. He paints, sure. We've been selling his art for quite a while now. There is another long pause. Yeah, absolutely, it was my idea. Mac nods. A smile starts at the corners of his mouth. Photos, no problem. I want to see him in action. Come on down here and have a look. We're open 365 days a year. You can't miss us. We're off I-95. Mac picks up the overturned trash can. Yeah, I think he'll be adding more pictures. It's, what do you call it? A work in progress. When the call is done, Mac shakes his head. Impossible, he says. An hour later, a man with a camera comes to take my picture. He's from the local paper, the one Julia called. How about you take one of me with the elephant, Mac suggests. He drapes his arm around Ruby's back, grinning as the camera clicks. Perfect, the man says. Perfect, Mac agrees. All right, here's Mac with Ruby. A star again. A photo of my billboard is in the newspaper. Mac tapes the story onto my window. Each day, more curious people arrive. They arrive in front of the billboard. They point and shake their heads. They take photos. Then they come to the mall and buy my paintings. While visitors watch, I dip my hands in fresh buckets of paint. I make pictures for the gift shop and pictures to add to the billboard. Trees with birds, a newborn elephant with glittering black eyes, a squirrel, a bluebird, a worm. I even paint Bob so he can be on the billboard too. I can tell he likes the picture, although he didn't say, he says I didn't quite capture his distinguished nose. Every afternoon, Mac and George add my new pictures to the billboard. People slow their cars while they work. Drivers honk and wave. My gift shop pictures now cost $65 with a frame. All right. We will continue with a chapter called The Ape Artist.